Elena Vasquez wiped the sweat from her face as she watched the mining machines tear into the red soil of Kepler 442b. The alien sun beat down hard on the human workers below. They moved slowly in the heat, their bodies bent under the weight of heavy equipment. This was what humans did now. They dug holes. They carried rocks. They served their masters. The crystal tower rose high above the mining site, like a sharp tooth against the orange sky. Inside that tower lived Overseer Zixthul, one of the Arshenate rulers who controlled this world. The Arshenate were tall beings made of living crystal. They thought with cold logic and spoke in voices that sounded like breaking glass. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Elena remembered when she was young, and her grandmother told her stories about Earth. Stories about blue skies and green trees and oceans that went on forever. Stories about when humans were free. But those were just stories now. Elena had never seen Earth. She was born here on this red world where humans existed only to serve. Commander Vasquez. The voice came from behind her, sharp and cold. Elena turned to see a message drone floating in the air. Its crystal shell glowed with the seal of the Arshenate. You are summoned to the tower. Immediately. Elena felt her stomach drop. Summons to the tower usually meant bad news. Very bad news. She climbed into her transport and flew toward the crystal spire, watching the human workers grow smaller below. They looked like ants from this height. That was probably how the Arshenate saw them too. The inside of the tower was cold and filled with a strange blue light. Elena's boots echoed on the crystal floor as she walked toward the center chamber. The walls were covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. This was Arshenate writing, meant for minds much different from human ones. Overseer Zixthul waited for her in the center of the room. The creature stood 3 meters tall, its body made of clear crystal that caught and bent the blue light. Where a human would have a face, Zixthul had only smooth crystal with 2 glowing points for eyes. When it spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once. "Human Commander," the voice said, "you will receive new orders." Elena kept her face blank. Showing emotion to the Arshenate was dangerous. They saw it as weakness or worse, as threat. "I am ready to serve, Overseer. Your species has been reclassified." The crystal being moved closer. Each step rang like a bell. The Council of Convergence has decided that human expansion must be controlled. Your breeding rates exceed acceptable parameters. Elena felt cold fear creep up her spine. "What does that mean, Overseer?" "It means your homeworld will be relocated." Zixthul SI points flared brighter. "The system you call Sol contains rare elements needed for the Empire's expansion. The planets will be strip-mined. Your Earth will be moved to Sector 779, a moon orbiting a dead star, sufficient for your reduced population." The words hit Elena like physical blows. Reduced population? 60% of humans will be terminated to ensure efficient resource management. The remaining 40% will be relocated to the new site. You have 6 standard months to prepare your people. Elena stared at the crystal being. This was not possible. This could not be happening. Earth was humanity's birthplace. 60% meant billions of people would die. Her mind could not hold numbers that large. "The decision is final," Zixthul continued. "Your emotional response is irrelevant. You will implement these orders across all human colonies. Resistance will result in total termination of your species." Elena forced herself to speak. "How do? We choose who lives and who dies? That is not our concern. You will make the selection based on useful skills. Miners, construction workers, basic technicians. The rest serve no purpose." The Overseer turned away. "You are dismissed." Elena walked out of the tower on legs that felt like water. The red sun was setting, painting the mining site in blood-colored light. Below her, Human workers were heading back to their shelters. They had no idea that most of them would be dead within 6 months. She returned to her small office and activated the communication array. As mining commander, she had access to channels that reached across the galaxy to other human colonies. The news had to be spread. People had to know. The first response came from Marcus Chon on Europa Station. His face appeared on her screen, tired and covered in dirt from archaeological work. "Elena? What's wrong? You look terrible." "Marcus, listen to me carefully. Send this message to every human colony you can reach. The Arshenate Council has ordered our termination. 60% of all humans are to be killed. Earth is going to be destroyed." Marcus's face went white. "That's not possible. We're Category 7. We're protected under the Primitive Species Accords." "Not anymore. We've been reclassified. They're giving us 6 months." Elena felt tears running down her face. She had not cried in years. 6 months to choose who lives and who dies. "Elena, there's something else. Something I found here on Europa, deep underground. It's not supposed to exist." Elena wiped her eyes. "What do you mean?" "We were digging new foundations for the habitat expansion. The scanners found empty space 2 kilometers down. When we investigated, we found structures. Ancient structures. They're human, Elena, but they're older than any human civilization we know about. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. The metal we found dates back millions of years. The architecture is human in design, but the technology is beyond anything we understand. And Elena, the security systems are still active. They only respond to human genetic markers." Elena stared at the screen. "Are you certain?" "I've tested it myself. When I touched the access panel, it came alive. Lights, displays, power systems that should have failed eons ago. It's waiting for us, Elena. It's been waiting for us." Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding across the mining complex. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Through her window, she could see Arshenate security ships dropping from orbit. Their crystal hulls gleamed like deadly jewels against the dark sky. "They're coming," she whispered. Marcus's image flickered on the screen. "Elena, whatever you do, don't let them find out about the sites. There are more of them. Mars, Titan, several outer colonies. We're sending the coordinates through encrypted channels. If they know what we found, the transmission cut off." Elena's door burst open, and crystal soldiers flowed into the room. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy as they surrounded her desk. "Human Commander," one of them spoke. "You are under arrest for unauthorized communications. The penalty is immediate termination." Elena looked at the soldiers and felt something she had not felt in years. Not fear, not despair, but anger. Pure, burning anger. For the first time in her life, she understood why her grandmother's stories always ended with humans fighting back. "I serve the Empire," she said quietly. "No longer." The soldier raised its weapon. "Your service is terminated." As the crystal, weapon charged with lethal energy, Elena thought about Marcus's words. Ancient structures waiting for human touch. Technology that should not exist. Maybe there was more to humanity than the Arshenate believed. Maybe there was more to humanity than humans themselves believed. The weapon fired, but Elena was already moving. Dr. Marcus Chun had been digging in the ice of Europa for 3 years, but he had never found anything like this. The tunnel stretched down into darkness, carved from solid rock with perfect precision. The walls were smooth as glass and covered, with symbols that looked almost human, but were far more complex than any writing system he knew. His team of 12 humans followed behind him, their lights casting dancing shadows on the ancient walls. They had been excavating this site for 2 weeks since the initial discovery. Each day brought new mysteries. Each day made less sense than the last. "How deep does this go?" asked Sarah Kim, his lead archaeologist. Her voice echoed strangely. In the tunnel, as if the walls were designed to carry sound in ways that defied physics. The scanners can't penetrate more than 50 meters ahead, Marcus replied. The metal in these walls interferes with our equipment. They had found the first chamber accidentally while expanding the Europa research station. The construction robots had broken through what they thought was a natural ice formation and discovered an artificial cavern. Inside the cavern was a sealed entrance made of metal that did not appear in any known periodic table. The entrance had remained sealed for 2 days, while Marcus tried every tool and technique he could think of. Then, in frustration, he had placed his bare hand against the door. It had opened immediately, responding to his touch like it had been waiting for him specifically. "Doctor, look at this." Tommy Park, their youngest team member, was pointing at something on the wall. "These symbols, they're changing." Marcus hurried over and saw that Tommy was right. The symbols carved into the wall were shifting and rearranging themselves. As he watched, they transformed into something that looked more and more like ancient human languages. Sanskrit, Sumerian, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and finally, modern English. "Welcome home," the wall now read. "We have been waiting." Sarah stepped backward. "That's not possible. Rock doesn't change. Metal doesn't rewrite itself." "This isn't rock or metal," Marcus said softly. "At least not like anything we understand." They continued deeper into the complex. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that stretched beyond the reach of their lights. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Along the walls stood machines that hummed with power despite being millions of years old. In the center of the chamber sat a raised platform with a chair designed for human proportions. Above the chair, floating in midair, without any visible support, was a sphere of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "My God," Sarah whispered. "Who built this?" Marcus approached the platform carefully. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, but something deeper than instinct drew him forward. The chair seemed to call to him in a way he could not explain. "Marcus, don't." Sarah grabbed his arm. "We don't know what it does." But Marcus was already climbing onto the platform. The moment his feet touched the surface, the entire chamber came alive. Lights blazed from every surface. The machines along the walls began operating with smooth efficiency. Displays appeared in the air, showing star maps and technical specifications written in the same shifting symbols they had seen in the tunnel. "It's a command center," Marcus breathed. "This whole complex is some kind of control facility." He sat in the chair and immediately felt a strange tingling in his mind. Information began flowing into his consciousness without passing through his eyes or ears. Images of star systems, technical diagrams, historical records, and vast databases of knowledge that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Marcus." Sarah was shouting his name, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. "Marcus, your eyes." Marcus could not see himself, but he could feel what was happening. His human limitations were falling away. His mind was expanding to accommodate information that would have driven him insane minutes earlier. He was connected to something vast and ancient, and patient. The knowledge came in waves. Earth was not humanity's first home. Humans had built an empire that spanned the galaxy millions of years ago. They had been powerful beyond imagining, with technology that could reshape matter at the atomic level and travel between stars as easily as walking across a room. But power had corrupted them. They had become cruel and ruthless, enslaving other species and consuming entire worlds for resources. The empire had grown so vast and terrible that it threatened to consume the galaxy itself. Then, in an act of wisdom that surprised even themselves, humanity had chosen to stop. They had built this network of hidden installations and voluntarily entered a state of genetic dormancy. They had made themselves small and weak and forgettable, sealing away their true nature until the day when they would need it again. The locks are failing, Marcus said aloud, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. The genetic restrictions are breaking down. We're remembering who we really are. Sarah was backing away from the platform. Marcus, you need to get out of that chair, now. But Marcus could not leave. Not yet. The network was showing him other sites. Mars had one buried beneath Olympus Mons. Titan had one in the hydrocarbon seas. Every human colony in the galaxy had been built on top of these ancient installations, though none of the colonists had known it. They're all activating, he said. Elena's message about the Arsenate termination order, it's triggering the awakening protocols. The network recognizes an existential threat to the human species. What does that mean? Marcus finally stood up from the chair, though part of his mind remained connected to the vast network. He looked at his hands and saw that they were glowing with a faint blue light. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that had not been there before. It means we're not Category 7 primitives, he said. We never were. We're the descendants of the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known. And we're starting to remember. The chamber around them continued to come alive. Machines that had slept for eons began performing functions that Marcus could not fully understand, but somehow knew were important. The installation was preparing for something. All of the installations were preparing. We need to warn the other sites, Sarah said. If the Arsenate finds out about this, they won't understand what they're seeing, Marcus replied. To them, we're just primitives playing with technology we found. They won't realize what it really means until it's too late. Tommy Park was examining one of the wall displays. Doctor, these star maps show the entire galaxy, but look at this. He pointed to a section of space that appeared empty on their modern charts. According to this, there should be thousands of star systems here. Where did they go? Marcus accessed the network and found the answer. We consumed them. The ancient human empire strip-mined entire regions of space. We turned star systems into raw materials for our expansion. He felt sick as the knowledge filled his mind. We were monsters. But we stopped ourselves, Sarah said. That has to count for something. Maybe. But the question is, what happens when we wake up completely? Do we become monsters again, or have we learned something from our long sleep? Before anyone could answer, alarms began echoing through the chamber. The displays showed Arsenate. Ships approaching Europa at high speed. Someone had detected the power surge from the installation's activation. They're coming, Marcus said. Sarah, take the team back to the surface. Pretend you were never here. What about you? Marcus looked at the chair and felt the network calling to him. There was so much more to learn, so much more to understand. But Elena and the other human colonies needed to know what they were dealing with. The awakening was not just happening here on Europa. It was happening everywhere humans lived. I'm going to try to contact the other sites. If we're all connected to this network, maybe we can coordinate our response to the Arsenate threat. Marcus, be careful. Whatever we were before, we're still human now. Don't lose sight of that. Marcus nodded and sat back down in the chair. The moment he made contact with the network, his consciousness expanded across the galaxy. He could sense other humans at other installations, all of them experiencing the same awakening he was going through. But he could also sense something else. The Arsenate were not the only threat humanity faced. The galaxy was full of species that remembered the ancient human empire. They remembered the terror and the suffering. If humanity truly awakened to its full potential, every other intelligent species in the galaxy would unite to destroy them. The awakening came with a terrible choice. Remain weak and face extinction at the hands of the Arsenate, or embrace their true nature and face the combined hatred of the entire galaxy. As Arsenate soldiers stormed into the chamber above, Marcus dove deeper into the network, searching for an answer that might not exist. Somewhere in the ancient databases, there had to be wisdom that could guide humanity through the storm that was coming. The soldiers found him sitting motionless in the chair, his eyes glowing with inner light. They assumed he was dead or catatonic. They had no idea that he was reaching across space to touch the minds of every human in the galaxy, preparing them for the war that was about to begin. Alana ducked behind a pile of mining equipment as crystal weapons fired over her head. The energy beams turned metal into vapor and stone into glass. 3 days had passed since her arrest, and she had been running ever since. The Arsenate security. Forces were hunting every human on Kepler 442b. With deadly efficiency she pressed her hand against the communicator hidden in her jacket. Marcus's message had reached her just before the soldiers stormed her office. The coordinates he had sent led to a site beneath the mining complex, buried deep in the planet's crust where the excavation robots had never dug. Alina, where are you? The voice belonged to Rodriguez, one of her mining foremen. He was hiding somewhere in the equipment yard, with a dozen other humans who had escaped the initial roundup. I'm moving toward the coordinates Marcus sent, she whispered into the communicator. The entrance should be in Tunnel 7, subsection 43. You're insane. That section is flooded with toxic gas. It's been sealed for years. Elena looked around the edge of her cover and saw crystal soldiers moving through the mining site in perfect formation. Their weapons swept left and right, searching for human heat signatures. Soon they would find her hiding place. The gas won't matter if we're all dead, she said. This is our only chance. She ran from cover to cover, moving deeper into the mining complex. Behind her, she could hear the soldiers shouting orders in their crystal language. The sound was like breaking glass, mixed with the screech of metal on metal. Tunnel 7 was exactly where the old maps said it would be, but the entrance was blocked by warning barriers and radiation symbols. Elena tore away the barriers and climbed down into the darkness. The air was thick and tasted like metal, but it was not as toxic as the warnings claimed. Her flashlight beam revealed rough-cut walls that gradually became smoother as she descended. After 20 minutes of climbing down maintenance ladders, she found what Marcus had described. The walls changed from carved stone to seamless metal. The tunnel opened into a chamber that stretched beyond her light. In the center of the chamber stood something that should not have existed on this planet. It was clearly human in design, but far more advanced than anything modern humanity could build. The structure rose from the floor like a metallic tree, its branches reaching toward the ceiling in complex patterns. Elena approached it slowly. Her heart was beating so hard, she could hear it echoing in the empty chamber. When she reached out and touched the nearest branch, the entire structure came alive with light. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Information flooded into her mind like a dam bursting. She saw star maps showing the location of every human colony in the galaxy. She saw technical specifications for weapons and ships that existed nowhere in current human knowledge. She saw the faces of humans she had never met, but who were somehow familiar. Who are you? She gasped aloud. The answer came not in words, but in images and emotions that filled her consciousness. She saw Earth as it had been millions of years ago, not the blue and green world of her grandmother's stories, but a gleaming planet covered in cities that reached into space. She saw human ships that could cross the galaxy in days rather than years. She saw other species kneeling before human masters, but she also saw something else. She saw the horror and guilt that had driven humanity to abandon its empire. She saw the deliberate decision to become small and weak and forgotten. She saw the genetic locks that had been placed on every human to prevent them from remembering their true nature. We were tyrants, she whispered. The structure pulsed with agreement. Humanity had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology. They had consumed entire star systems for raw materials. They had enslaved species that would not submit willingly. They had become everything they themselves would have fought against Dot, so they had chosen to sleep. They had hidden their technology in installations like this one, and encoded the locations in human DNA. They had made themselves forget who they were, trusting that someday their descendants would be wise enough to handle the power responsibly. Elena felt tears running down her face as the full weight of human history settled into her mind. Are we ready now? Are we wise enough? The structure had no answer for that. Wisdom was not something that could be programmed or inherited. It had to be earned through choice and consequence. But ready or not, the awakening was beginning. Elena could sense other humans across the galaxy making contact with similar installations. She could feel their minds opening to possibilities they had never imagined. She could sense the genetic locks dissolving as humanity faced extinction at the hands of the Arshanet. Elena! Rodriguez's voice echoed down the tunnel. They found the entrance. They're coming down. Elena looked at the structure and made her choice. She pressed both hands against the central trunk and opened her mind completely to whatever it wanted to show her. Dot. The knowledge came in a torrent that should have killed her. Weapons technology, ship designs, manufacturing processes, genetic engineering techniques, and most importantly, the locations and access codes for every installation in the galaxy. She was no longer just Elena Vasquez, mining commander on a backwater world. She was connected to a network that spanned the galaxy and contained the accumulated knowledge of humanity's greatest civilization. When she opened her eyes, crystal soldiers were pouring into the chamber. Their weapons were already firing, but Elena was no longer entirely human. She moved with speed and precision that should have been impossible, dodging energy beams that carved smoking trenches in the walls behind her. She reached out with her mind and felt the installation respond. Defense systems that had slept for eons came online. The chamber filled with a humming sound that grew louder and louder, until the crystal soldiers had to cover their hearing organs in pain. "Surrender, human," the lead soldier commanded. "You cannot escape." Elena smiled, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly dangerous. "I'm not trying to escape." She gestured toward the walls, and the ancient defense systems revealed themselves. Weapons that made Arshanate technology look like stone tools emerge from hidden panels. The crystal soldiers had time for one moment of surprise before the chamber erupted in controlled destruction. When the light faded, Elena stood alone among puddles of melted crystal that had once been living beings. She felt no satisfaction in their deaths, only a cold understanding that this was just the beginning. Through the network, she could sense similar awakenings happening across the galaxy. Humans were remembering who they really were. The genetic locks were failing. Ancient installations were coming online after millions of years of dormancy. But she could also sense something else. Fear, terror, even the other species in the galaxy remembered the ancient human empire. They remembered the suffering and the oppression. As soon as they realized what was happening, every intelligent species in the galaxy would unite to prevent humanity's return to power. Elena climbed back up the tunnel toward the surface. Above her, she could hear the sounds of battle as other humans discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. The Arshanate occupation force was being systematically destroyed by people who had been considered barely intelligent slaves. Just hours before, she emerged into the red daylight of Kepler 442b and saw the crystal tower burning in the distance. The overseer's perfect symbol of authority was collapsing as human miners tore it apart with their bare hands. Hands that were now strong enough to crush crystal as easily as clay. Rodriguez ran toward her, his face filled with wonder and terror. "Elena, what's happening to us?" Jenkins lifted a 20-ton excavator over his head. Sarah can see in perfect darkness. We're not human anymore. We're more human than we've ever been, Elena replied. We're remembering what humanity really means. She looked up at the sky, where Arsenate ships were fleeing the system in panic. Soon, word would spread across the galaxy. The human slaves were awakening. The ancient empire was returning. Elena felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had been given a second chance, but second chances were not guarantees. They could choose to repeat the mistakes of their ancestors, or they could find a different path. Through the network, she reached out to Marcus and every other human who had made contact with the installations. We need to talk, she broadcast. Across space, all of us. Because what we do next will determine whether humanity deserves to survive. The answer came back from thousands of minds across the galaxy, all speaking with one voice. We're listening. Elena smiled grimly and began planning humanity's return to the stars. This time, she promised herself, they would do better. This time, they would be worthy of the power they were about to reclaim. But deep in her heart, she wondered if any species could wield ultimate power without becoming the monster that power created. The galaxy was about to find out. The council chamber of the hegemonic convergence had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 1,000 species filled the crystal galleries, their voices raised in panic and demand. At the center of it all, Supreme Archon Veltar stood like a pillar of frozen lightning, trying to maintain order as their empire fell apart around them. The human infestation must be purged immediately, shrieked Ambassador Teal of the Methane Collective. Their tentacles writhed in agitation as they spoke. Our monitoring stations report impossible energy readings from every human colony. They have acquired weapons technology that exceeds our understanding. Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with controlled anger. 3 days had passed since the first reports of human uprising began flooding in from across the galaxy. What had started as routine slave control operations had turned into military disasters. Entire Arsenate fleets were being destroyed by humans who should not have been capable of operating a simple computer. The situation is under evaluation, Veltar announced, their voice resonating through the chamber like breaking stone. Emergency. Protocols have been implemented. All human settlements are to be sterilized using orbital bombardment. A new voice cut through the noise. General Zexcon of the Warcast stepped forward, their massive frame covered in battle scars. Supreme Archon, orbital bombardment has failed. The humans have activated planetary defense systems that do not appear in any of our intelligence reports. Our weapons are being neutralized before they can reach the surface. Veltar felt something they had not experienced in centuries of rule. Fear, not for themselves, but for the very concept of order they represented. Explain. The human colony on Kepler 442b was targeted for complete elimination 6 hours ago. 3 battle fleets fired simultaneously from orbit. The energy beams were absorbed by some kind of shield technology we cannot penetrate. Then, Zexcon paused, as if struggling to believe their own words. And the planet fired back. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the tactical recording of the battle. The 3 Arsenate fleets hung in space like glittering jewels, their weapons blazing down at the red planet below. But instead of destruction, their beams simply vanished into a shimmering barrier of energy dot. Then the planet's surface lit up with weapons that had no right to exist. Beams of coherent force lanced upward, passing through the shields of the Arsenate ships as if they were not there. In seconds, 3 entire fleets were reduced to expanding clouds of vaporized crystal and metal. This is impossible, whispered Representative Hicks of the Silicon Oligarchy. Humans are Category 7. They do not possess this level of technology. Veltar studied the recording with growing dread. They recognized some of the weapon signatures from the oldest archives records. That predated the Arsenites' rise to power. There had been another empire once, long ago, that had possessed technology like this. An empire that had consumed star systems and enslaved species with casual efficiency. "Bring me the archive keeper," Veltar commanded. The ancient being that shuffled into the chamber was older than the Arsenate civilization itself. Archive Keeper Taislan had served the previous galactic rulers and somehow survived their fall. Their form was so old and worn that few could even determine what species they had originally been. "You summoned me, Supreme Archon?" The voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of ions. "Tell them about the First Empire," Veltar said. "Tell them what we destroyed to claim this galaxy." Taislan's ancient eyes fixed on the holographic display, and a shudder ran through their frail form. "The Builders. We called them the Builders, though they called themselves something else. A simple word in their language. Human." The chamber fell silent. Even the most aggressive species representatives stopped their demands to listen. "They ruled everything you see around you," Taislan continued. "Every star system, every inhabited world, every species that had achieved spaceflight. Their technology was beyond our comprehension. They could reshape matter at the molecular level. They could travel between galaxies as easily as you cross this room. But we defeated them," protested General Zex Khan. The Arsenate rose from the ashes of their empire. "No." Taislan's voice carried absolute certainty. "They defeated themselves. At the height of their power, when they could have consumed the entire galaxy, they simply stopped. Their fleets disappeared. Their worlds went dark. Their vast installations fell silent." "Why?" Veltar demanded. "Some say they grew tired of conquest. Others believe they found a moral conscience that their power had long suppressed. The truth is, no one knows. They vanished so completely that within a few generations, most species forgot they had ever existed. We rose to fill the void they left behind." Representative Mox of the Traitor Guilds leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that these humans are the same species?" "I am suggesting," Taislan said slowly, "that the humans never left. They have been hiding among us, playing the role of primitives while their true civilization slept. And now, for some reason, they are waking up." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If the humans were indeed the Builders returned, then every species in the galaxy was facing not rebellion, but the return of their former masters. "We must unite every fleet in the galaxy," Veltar declared. "If they are truly awakening, we have perhaps days before they reach full power. This is not about maintaining the Arsenate Empire anymore. This is about preventing the return of a civilization that once enslaved us all." Emergency communications began flooding out from the council chamber to every corner of the galaxy. Ancient enemies put aside their differences. Trade disputes were forgotten. Territorial conflicts ceased. For the first time in galactic history, every intelligent species began working together toward a single goal: the complete extermination of humanity before they could reclaim their birthright. But even as the greatest military force in galactic history began to assemble, reports continued to pour in from the human worlds. The awakening was accelerating. Humans who had been barely capable of operating mining equipment were now displaying abilities that violated known laws of physics. Mars, human archaeologists had uncovered a manufacturing complex that was producing ships at impossible speed. The vessels emerging from underground factories were sleek and deadly, incorporating technology that made the most advanced Arsenate designs look primitive. On Titan, human researchers had activated what appeared to be a communication network that spanned the entire galaxy. They were coordinating their efforts across vast distances with perfect efficiency. On Europa, a human scientist named Marcus Chon had somehow connected his consciousness to installations on every human world simultaneously. He was orchestrating the awakening like a conductor, leading a vast orchestra. Supreme Archon, General Zexcon reported. We have a problem. Our spy networks are reporting that the humans are not just remembering their technology. They are remembering their history. They know who we are. They know what we did to them. Beltar felt their crystalline form grow cold. What do you mean? They know that we built our civilization on the ruins of theirs. They know that we enslaved their descendants. They know that we classified them as primitives to hide the truth from ourselves. Zexcon's voice carried a note of despair. Supreme Archon, they have every reason to hate us. And now they have the power to act on that hatred. Through the chamber's observation ports, Veltar could see the first human ships appearing in the system. They moved with fluid grace that defied conventional physics, their hulls glowing with contained energy that hurt to look at directly. Long until the combined fleets reached the system? Veltar asked. 18 hours at maximum jump speed, Zexcon replied. And how long until those ships reach us? General Zexcon consulted their tactical displays, then looked up with an expression of defeat. 6 minutes, Supreme Archon. Veltar stared at the approaching human vessels and realized that their 1,000-year empire was about to end exactly as it had begun. In violence, conquest, and the subjugation of the weak by the strong. The only question was whether the humans would be as merciless as the Archonate had been. Looking at the deadly grace of those approaching ships, Veltar suspected they were about to find out. Open a communication channel, they commanded. Perhaps there is still time to negotiate. But even as the words left their crystalline throat, Veltar knew it was too late. The age of the Archonate was ending. The age of humanity was about to begin again. And this time, the humans would remember exactly why they had chosen to sleep in the first place. Elena stood on the bridge of the ship that had built itself around her. The vessel had emerged from the depths of Kepler 442b like a living thing, its hull flowing and reshaping itself according to her thoughts. Through the transparent metal of the viewing port, she could see the crystal spires of the Archonate capital world growing larger as they approached. Behind her, the greatest fleet in human history stretched across the void. Thousands of ships that had awakened from their million-year sleep, each one capable of destroying entire star systems. Their hulls gleamed with contained power that made the nearby stars look dim by comparison. Status report, Elena said, though she already knew the answer through her connection to the network. Marcus Chon's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, his consciousness distributed across the entire fleet. All installations are now online. Human colonies across the galaxy have been liberated. Archonate resistance has been neutralized. Casualties? Minimal on our side. The awakening granted our people abilities they needed to survive. As for the ARCHON 8... pods, Marcus paused. Approximately 40% of their military forces have been destroyed. The rest are retreating to defensive positions. Elena felt the weight of those numbers. Millions of beings dead because humanity had remembered who they really were. She tried to feel regret, but the ancient memories flowing through her mind made sympathy difficult. The Archonate had enslaved her people for centuries. They had planned to exterminate 60% of all humans. They had classified humanity as barely intelligent animals. But those same ancient memories also showed her what humanity had once been. A species so powerful and ruthless that they had made the Archonate look merciful by comparison. Elena, came another voice through the network. This one belonged to David Park, a former mining engineer who now commanded a battle group near Earth. We're receiving communications from the enemy fleet. Multiple species are requesting negotiations. Put them through. The main display shimmered and resolved into the crystalline form of Supreme Archon Veltar. The being's light pulsed with what Elena's enhanced senses recognized as fear. "We wish to discuss terms," Veltar said without preamble. "The hegemonic convergence acknowledges that humanity has reclaimed its rightful position in the galaxy." Elena almost laughed. Rightful position. 3 days ago, these same beings had considered humans suitable only for manual labor. Now they spoke of rightful positions, because humanity had demonstrated the ability to destroy them. "What terms?" she asked. "A return to the old boundaries. Humanity may reclaim the core worlds that once belonged to her empire. The Outer Rim territories will remain under convergence authority. A division of the galaxy that respects both our claims." Elena studied the Arshanet's proposal through the network, sharing it instantly with every awakened human in the galaxy. The response was immediate and unanimous. The core worlds represented less than 20% of the galaxy. The rest contained most of the habitable planets and resources. "Counterproposal," Elena said. "Complete withdrawal of all Arshanate forces to your original home systems. Dissolution of the slave trade. Reparations for 2 centuries of human oppression." Veltar's crystalline form flickered with indignation. "Impossible. We cannot simply abandon our territories. Millions of species depend on convergence protection. The same protection you offered humanity? Humanity was different. Your species was ... diminished. We did not realize your true nature." Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but it was not entirely her own emotion. Through the network, she could sense the rage of every human who had lived and died under Arshanate rule. Her grandmother's stories of lost freedom. The miners who had bent their backs under alien suns. The children who had grown up believing they were inferior. "Our true nature," she repeated slowly. "And what exactly is our true nature, Supreme?" "Archon?" Before Veltar could answer, another voice cut into the communication. This one belonged to Archive Keeper Tyslan, the ancient being who had served both empires. "Your true nature," the old keeper said, "is exactly what you choose it to be. You have the power to be conquerors or liberators, tyrants or protectors. The choice is yours, just as it was for your ancestors." Elena felt the network pulse with consideration. Tens of thousands of awakened human minds were weighing the Keeper's words against their own memories and desires. "What did our ancestors choose?" Elena asked. "They chose to step aside, rather than become the monsters their power would have made them. But they also chose to hide from their responsibilities, rather than find a better way to use their abilities." Through the viewing port, Elena could see the combined fleets of every species in the galaxy massing around the Arshanate capital. Desperate enemies who had united only in the face of humanity's return. Ships from 100 different civilizations, all pointed at the human fleet with weapons charged and ready. "They're going to fight us no matter what we decide," Marcus observed. Through the network, every species in the galaxy remembers the old empire. They'll never trust us to be different. Elena nodded. The galactic community had spent 1,000 years building their civilizations on the assumption that the ancient human empire was gone forever. They would not willingly make room for its return, no matter how benevolent humanity claimed to be. "We could destroy them all," offered Sarah Kim from her position, commanding the Earth Defense Fleet. "Our technology is still superior. We could conquer the galaxy in a matter of weeks. And prove that we're exactly what they fear us to be," Elena replied. She closed her eyes and reached deeper into the network, touching the minds of humans across the galaxy. Former slaves who now commanded starships. Miners who could reshape matter with their thoughts. Children who had awakened to abilities that made them living gods. What she found there surprised her. Yes, there was anger. Yes, there was a desire for revenge. But there was also something else. Something that had grown during the long years of oppression and had survived the awakening intact. Compassion, not for their former oppressors, but for the innocent beings who would suffer if humanity chose the path of conquest. The very trait that had made humans seem weak to the Arshenate was still there, stronger than ever. "I have a different proposal," Elena announced, opening her eyes. She gestured, and the tactical display changed to show the entire galaxy. Human territories were marked in blue, while the rest belonged to various other species. "We don't want your territories," she told Veltar. "We don't want to rule over other species. What we want is the freedom to exist without persecution. The right to develop our own worlds without interference. The guarantee that no one will ever again decide that humans are suitable only for slavery." Veltar's form pulsed with confusion. "You could take whatever you wished. Your power is absolute. Why negotiate?" "Because absolute power absolutely corrupts," Elena quoted. "Our ancestors learned that lesson. We're trying not to repeat their mistakes." She turned to address the combined alien fleet through the same communication channel. "To all species listening to this transmission, humanity could conquer you. We could enslave you as you enslaved us. We could consume your worlds as raw materials for our expansion. We have that power." She paused, letting the threat sink in, "but we choose not to. Instead, we offer you a different kind of galaxy. One where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Where advanced species share their knowledge instead of hoarding it. Where disputes are settled through negotiation instead of force. And if we refuse?" This question came from a new voice, one belonging to Fleet Admiral Kex of the hegemonic navy. Elena smiled, and for a moment her expression carried echoes of the terrible power humanity had once wielded. "Then you'll face the same choice our ancestors faced. Rule through fear and eventually destroy yourselves, or find a better way to live together." She gestured again, and the human fleet began moving. But instead of attacking, the ships spread out across the galaxy, taking positions around human colonies and former slave worlds. "We're going home," Elena announced, "to rebuild what was destroyed and protect what remains. Any species that wants to join us in building something better is welcome. Any species that tries to return us to slavery will discover why the ancient human empire was so feared." The communication channel fell silent. Elena could sense frantic discussions taking place across the alien fleet as different species tried to decide how to respond to humanity's unexpected offer. "Do you think they'll accept?" Marcus asked through the network. Elena looked out at the stars and thought about her grandmother's stories of a blue and green world where humans had once been free. Soon those stories would be reality again. Earth would be restored. Humanity would rebuild. But more importantly, they would do it without becoming the monsters they had the power to be. "Some will," she said finally. "Others won't. But that's their choice to make." She settled back into the captain's chair as the ship began its journey home. Around her, the most powerful fleet in galactic history dispersed peacefully, its crews eager to see the worlds they had fought to protect. Not it would not be easy. There would be those who tested humanity's resolve. There would be conflicts and misunderstandings. There would be moments when the temptation to use their full power would be almost overwhelming.